Okay, hi guys, Sean here from Cherished Tree Sawmill. Just wanted to do a video today about some of the things to think about before you decide to buy a sawmill. I know, I know for me, I was a woodworker. I started woodworking when I was probably 13 or 14. I think I was 14 years old when I built a small shop up in the granary of my parents' big barn we had at home. It was an old granary that I converted into a small woodworking shop. So I went out and bought a table saw that I drug up there. I had a Sears Craftsman router and a router table. What else? I had a drill press that I put up in that shop. I had a trim tramp for my skill saw, and I had also a table where before I had the table saw, I guess I had that table that you inverted your skill saw to kind of make a makeshift table saw, but it wasn't long before I found a $100 Sears Craftsman table saw to build. But anyway, I say all that to say I think a natural progression for guys that want to buy sawmills is, you know, they're into woodworking. They start with softwoods and they make the progression to hardwoods. And once they start buying hardwoods, they see how expensive the wood can be. And then they see these ads of these sawmills that you know, are in open meadows, and like I know Wood Miser had a great production or a great promotion video of the mountains were in the background, and they pulled this saw into this open meadow with these perfect logs sitting there beside the saw, and they start sawing up these perfect logs in this perfect setting. Like it was a great promotional video. I remember I sent away for that video and it came on VHF, and it got me, I guess. I guess it kind of hooked me because you know, I thought, well, we've got a bit of bush, and I did a fair bit of woodworking, and I was wanting to find a cheaper source of hardwood. Cheaper is a relative word though. So that was it was years before I got a Wood Miser. Like that didn't happen. Oh, that was years. I probably we were just married, and I remember seeing that video and thinking, man, this would be great, you know. And I don't know. I guess maybe probably about 20 years passed before I got my first sawmill, which was a Norwood HD 36 sawmill. So it was a good saw. It was, and I upgraded to the hydraulics relatively quick on that saw. I did saw portably briefly with that saw. Yeah, I have no problem with that, with the Norwood product. It was a different, I think it's a bit of a different level than what the Wood Miser is, especially this level Wood Miser. This is an LT50, which is fully hydraulic, has the Setworks 2 on it. So bit of a different class of saw, and the price reflects that. Like this has a 35 horsepower diesel. That other one I think was 26 horse gas. I think it was 26. But it was a good saw, cut lumber. You know, I had to push that one through. I didn't have the automatic feed, so I pushed the saw through, which wasn't that bad. It was you had a good feel of what you were cutting. So so anyway, to say that that was the first saw that I got. There was I guess an extenuating circumstance why I sold that saw. So I did sell it with the hopes of finding another saw down the road a little bit. So yeah, it was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years before I ended up finding. I started looking probably about 2 years from selling that saw, and then it took me probably a couple years, 2.5 years I think, to find this saw. It was used. Just got lucky, really. It was a good find. It only had like, I think it was 17 hours on the hour meter, and but it was a couple years old. So, and it wasn't very far from me. I started looking cross country to try to get a good use saw, and it was hard to find. So I was lucky enough to run across this one. So far it's been a good saw. We haven't cut like an extreme amount with it. I don't know. I think right now we're at about, I don't know, I think it's about 350 hours or something. So I know some guys cut like all the time, and that is very little for them. And it is. It's not a lot for us either. We have to get cutting more, and I want to get cutting more, but we're starting this business from scratch, and just getting the shed built. Like, I'm building this room right now. I'm not sure when this video will come out. Probably before you see the video on this little room, but everything, just building the lumber racks in here, building the partition walls, getting the shop insulated piece by piece, buying the equipment for the mill shop. So I guess we're kind of doing a business that will allow people to, they could bring me a log, and then I could process that log on the sawmill. We can dry it in our kiln. We can bring that wood into our mill shop and mill it into either hardwood flooring or moldings for their house. So we're taking basically from the log to a finished product. So that is a lot more steps than what some of you guys are going to be doing if you're looking at maybe buying a sawmill. You may only decide to saw lumber and sell air dried lumber. So that would be a lot different. So anyway, I guess what I wanted to talk about is about some of the things to think about before you buy a sawmill. So there's a big range now. They're starting to come out with these manual mills that, around for, I think Wood Miser starts here in Canada. I think they start their manual mills around $3,500, I think. You can go check it out on Wood Miser's website, but I'm not sure. I think it's around $3,500 to get a manual mill. And trust me, if you're just a hobbyist and you're just looking to cut some of your own logs, that you have a source of logs, you're just going to cut for yourself, that's probably all you need for the most part. For the most part, it might differ if you want to build wide slabs of live edge for a big table that you want to build. So you'll need that extra wide cut. You also can get that in a manual mill as well, so you can check all that out. It's more money, obviously, but some of the things you got to think about when you buy that mill. So $3,500, that's not that bad. You can you can you know, you can maybe justify that when you go out and you look at some, let's say you want to build out a walnut and you're looking at walnut at you know, $9 to $12 a board foot for walnut. So you say, wow, I can pay for that saw pretty quick. And that's probably true if you're looking at just paying for the saw. But there's questions about, there's lots of questions around having a saw. So the first question is, how are you going to get your logs? That's one question. And if the answer is, well, we've got a small bush with a few trees that we can harvest it out of that. Okay, so depending on what your situation is, if you're a farmer that has access to a chainsaw, loading equipment, trailers, then it might not be that big of an issue for you. But if you're a small homestead that has bought maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 acres, and you got a couple acres in the back that you're thinking of pulling these trees out, and you don't have that equipment, then that's something you have to think about. So first of all, you have to buy a chain. I think it's called felling, but I don't know. I'm not a logger. But you have to kind of know what you're doing when you're taking a tree down. I do my own. I'll drop my own trees. We were kind of raised cutting a lot of wood for our heat. That's the way we heated our house in the winter. So we were always back in the bush with my dad working on cutting wood in the wintertime for our winter heat for the following year. So we learned a bit about dropping trees there. You can learn a lot on YouTube as well, like good techniques about dropping trees, felling trees. But it's something to consider if you haven't done that before. So that's something to think about. So you need the knowledge, you need the equipment, so you'll need a saw to do that. You'll need a way to get into the bush to skid the logs out. So if that may depend on a skidder. Like when I'm talking a skidder, I'm talking about the smaller skidders on the back of a tractor that like a skidder winch, basically. The smaller ones that fit on the back of a 3-point hitch for a tractor. Not necessarily need that one. There's a fly that is just driving me nuts around here, right? It's flying around my head. So anyway, right now I've been looking at buying one of those, but I don't have one right now. So we cut to try to get close enough to be able to put the chain on and skid the logs out. And that's how I do it here. I'm just waiting for a customer here, so somebody's coming down the road, but that's not a customer. So just let that piece of equipment go by. It's fairly loud. That's actually my brother. He's getting ready to do wheat. So he's moving some wagons up to his wheat field. So anyway, so you need a skidder or a tractor to get back to skid the logs out. Then once the logs are out onto a spot where you can trim them up, you need a way to load the logs onto something that can bring the logs up from the bush. So either a running gear, a running gear that you make out of for a log wagon, or you get a trailer or a dump wagon or something you'll need to bring those logs up. And that is not cheap. A loader tractor or a skid steer or some means of picking that log up. Some people will be able to winch it up onto their trailer. That if I've never really went that route, it would be a slow process, but guys do it. Guys have created winches to get the logs up on the trailer. So there's that option. So once the logs are up, you need a place to store the logs in the yard. And the logs should be kept in a spot where they're not going to degrade quickly. So ideally, the logs would be kept in a shaded area. You have to process the logs to length to get ready for milling. So what I do is when the logs come into my yard, I'll cut them to length, I'll paint the ends. Right now I've been using just old paint from the hardware store. There's not a really good source, at least I haven't found a good source for anchor seal here in Canada yet. And then to ship it into Canada, and then it seems to be a fairly pricey when I do that. Anyway, I'm getting off on a topic, but I treat the end somehow. I'd like to find a way to treat it with anchor seal, but right now I just coat it with old paint at the hardware store that they want to get rid of. So I was buying that for $10 a gallon, and I can cover a fair bit of ends with a gallon of paint. That's basically just to slow down the drying process so your logs don't split as quickly or as bad. So there's that. So you have to have a spot to store the logs. You process the logs. And then now you need a spot for your sawmill. So if it's a stationary mill, you probably need to build a shed around that saw if you don't want to leave it out in the elements. So there'll be some kind of lean-to or sawmill shed that you have to build. So once you do that and you're able to saw your logs, and trust me, if you're just a hobbyist and you're just cutting wood for yourself, if you have the logs available there, even with a manual mill, 2 weekends will cut you probably all the wood you're going to use in 10 years or more, probably. Maybe 20 years. And that's being a pretty steady woodworker. You can cut a lot of wood with a manual mill in 2 weekends if you have logs available. And honestly, if it's an economic decision that you're thinking of, if it's purely economics, then I don't think it's a wise decision to buy a mill and then go through the added equipment you needed to support that mill for the amount of wood that you're going to have as a hobbyist to pull out of a store of lumber that you've cut. That is a big horsefly. That thing, you can see why they call it a horsefly. That thing's probably 1.5 inches long. Anyway, hopefully he doesn't want to bite me. All right. So sorry, I kind of diverted there. There he is again. We might have to have a fight here. So I got diverted there. I got sidetracked. I was following you through, and I got a bit sidetracked. So let me go back to, once you cut the wood, now you've got the wood that you have to have a spot to air dry the wood. You need a cover. Well, you don't need a cover, but it's good to have a covered area for that wood. that you can allow that wood to air dry. And then after it's air dried, which would take, I don't know, roughly a year. I know the old saying was a year an inch. That depends on the type of wood you're trying to dry. Pine and poplar, cherry, they'll dry quicker. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown cherry in there. Cherry's kind of a middle ground wood for drying. But poplar will dry quick, pine will dry quick. Then you, on the other end of the spectrum, you have your oaks that take a long time to dry. So it'll vary. It's not always a year an inch, but it'll vary, and you'll only get that down to, you won't get that down to, if you want to work with 7 to 9% moisture wood, you're not going to get that kiln drying. Or sorry, you're not going to get that air drying. The wood is only going to air dry down to basically the environment it's in, the relative humidity in your area. There's a word for that. It's what is it? The equilibrium humidity. So I don't know. The EMC, I think it's called. EMC. Anyway, sorry. I just grabbed the camera. I thought of doing this today. It's a super hot day, and I thought, I've been thinking about doing this video for a while, and I just grabbed the camera and I'm just throwing it out there. I don't have notes or anything, and I don't really, personally, I don't really have, how do I say it? I wouldn't be able to deliver it very well, the message, with trying to read off notes. So I'm just kind of going off what I'm kind of thinking. That's why I talk slow. I know it's annoying when you're watching a video, and sometimes I really pause and I'm constantly thinking about trying to say the right thing. I wish I could speak quicker and more fluently, but that's just the way you're made, I guess. So anyway, so back to the wood. So if you're going to air dry the wood, you need a spot to air dry it. You're only going to get it down to roughly, in my area, it's roughly 16% to 16 to 20% is kind of where we would have it air dry. So then that will bring the question, if you want to bring kiln dried wood that's sterilized into your house, then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to dry your wood. Whether you take that to a person that will custom dry it for you, or you go through the expense of building your own kiln. So there's that part of it. So then once the wood is dried, you need a place to store the wood that is out of the elements, that's going to keep the wood dry, that's going to keep the wood in a manner that you'll be able to use it in the future. Like this is what I see a lot. I see a lot of these guys go and buy small sawmills. And then they get their logs, they go through the work of getting their logs, they cut the logs, and then it's like that's where their attention to detail stops. And they stack this wood on a crooked pile that's not stickered properly. Sometimes it's not even stickered at all. They just dead stack the wood on this crooked platform, and then they wonder why in a year they go to get their wood and all they got is garbage. Like they got moldy, half decayed wood that's twisted and basically good for nothing. If you're going to saw the wood, if you're going to go through the trouble of sawing wood, then you really need to understand and learn how to dry that wood properly. That's key. So, my brother again, I think he's going back to get the combine. So anyway, these are the things you have to think about when you buy a sawmill. It is not just that $35 saw. And then there's other things that I didn't talk about, like where are you going to buy your blades? Are you going to have your blades sharpened? And if so, do you have a person to sharpen your blades that's close to you, or do you have to go and invest in sharpening equipment? And if you're investing in a sharpener, then you probably got to invest in a setter. So, and that's not a small cost. Like, to buy a good sharpener and a good setter, you're probably going to be close to $5,000 in Canada here, maybe more, depending on what kind of setter you want to get. So you could be up around 6 or 7, I think, right now for both of those, if you want an automatic setter. And you can get less expensive setters and sharpeners, and I went down that route. Initially, I bought I think it was an $800 or $900 sharpener, and yeah, you get what you pay for, I'll say that. I think my sharpener now, I bought one from Wood Miser. It's an automatic sharpener that I think it was around $3,500, $3,700 or whatever, but it works. It's a good sharpener. I can sharpen a blade quickly, and it works. I can keep a blade now that cuts as well, or I'll say as well as a new blade. So anyway, there's that. Okay guys, sorry about that. Battery went dead. Tried another battery, that didn't work, so I had to wait for this battery to charge a bit to try to finish this video. But I can't even remember where we left off. I think we were talking about having a spot to store the wood after it's been dried, either air dried or kiln dried. So this is kind of, I guess the things I'm trying to explain is that there's a lot of other factors to consider before buying that saw. Some of the things I didn't talk about is having a spot to saw. We talked about the shed, but I'm talking about the lanes to the shed, the lanes to the saw. Is that going to have to be graveled? In the fall, does it turn just sloppy? We're on clay here, so once our clay gets wet, I can't work in it. I can't work in it at all. So all our lanes have to be graveled to be able to work once the fall hits and the damp weather comes where the soil gets wet. So that's a big cost, is just having the lanes to the saw, the maintenance on the saw, the oil and gas to run the saw, the maintenance. Like I said, we talked about the saw blades. That's a big cost. There's a lot of expenses to the saw beyond the saw. We talked about moving the logs. So you buy so I bought an old forklift to try to move the logs at the start. Well, that leads into a whole other things, like trying to keep that forklift going and dealing with the maintenance on that, and then sharpening your chainsaw blades. So these are things you have to consider if you want it to saw. And again, I start talking about the economics of it. If you're doing it for economics, trust me, you'd be better off to either one, buy your wood from a sawmill that's selling hardwood, or two, if you do want to access, or sorry, if you do want to make use of logs that you have, take the logs to a sawmill and have them cut. That's actually a very economical way to do it. Like we charge, if I'm sawing alone, I charge $110 an hour to saw with an LT50 fully hydraulic sawmill. If I have somebody with me, I'm charging $135 right now. 2 people sawing, if you brought me, I don't know, 10 logs, let's say, and let's say they average, let's say they're averaging 200 board feet a log. 10 logs for 2 guys, depending on the species, depending on how good the logs are, depending, you know, if they're good bolts, you know, straight logs where I don't have to mess around, I can just throw that log up on the mill and start cutting. You know, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours, you're gonna have close to 2,000 board feet of lumber. You know, so for what's $135 times 6, whatever that is, 6 times 18, $780. Okay, so for $800 roughly, you've got close to 2,000 board feet of lumber. Honestly, it doesn't get any, that's going to be the cheapest route to, that's going to be definitely your cheapest route for having wood. If you're a woodworker and you want hardwood and you have access to trees, that's the route to take, honestly. However, if your goal is, or sorry, if your desire is more for the joy of cutting and sawing, and not economics, then yeah, by all means, maybe buying a saw is right for you, and you can gain a lot of enjoyment out of sawing, and you're not worried about buying all that extra equipment to service the saw. That's a different story. And so again, I just want to send this video is just basically pause and think about the whole big picture before taking the plunge and buying that saw. So if you ask me, would I have done it again the way I did it? It kind of snowballs on you, right? So like, you kind of buy the saw and you're thinking, oh well, you know, I'm thinking about putting the saw on the road, doing some portable work. If that's your goal, then you can get away with sawing with not a lot of extra equipment, right? You put it on the customer to supply that equipment, to get the logs to your mill, and then you saw the logs, and then you basically pack up and go home. So they deal with that's another thing I didn't talk about, is dealing with all the waste wood that you have to deal with. You got to deal with the sawdust, you have to deal with the slabs that's coming off the logs. If you're cutting at home, you have to have a spot for all that, or deal with all that. So if you're buying a saw to just be a portable sawmill or a sawyer, then yeah, a lot of the things we talked about in this video might not apply to you. So, but if you're, this video is more for the hobbyist homeowner guy that wants to buy a saw because he sees there is an economic gain for buying a saw. And my message to you is there might not be that economic gain that you think, because there's so many hidden costs in owning a saw that you'd be better off to buy that chainsaw, fall those logs or fell those logs, whatever way you want to say it, and take those logs to a mill that can cut it up for you. You'd be way further ahead economically. But again, if you're buying the saw for the love of sawing wood, you think you're gonna like, some guys love it. Some guys love sawmilling. And if you're that guy, then yeah, that investment in that saw and that investment in that skid steer and, you know, saw shed and the lanes to the saw shed and sharpening equipment and a place to dry the wood, or a kiln, that might be all worth it for you. And however, I will say at the end of it, if you're doing it for business, like ours evolved into a business that we're trying to get off the ground, and we're trying to sell retail hardwood, and it's going to be different for everybody's location, but that is not a, if you think you're going to make big money doing that, hopefully you're in an area that supports that. I'm in a rural area in southern Ontario, and it's tough getting customers to come to a rural area, a shop like ours. They're starting to come, like through social media and doing videos like this. I'm trying to get the word out that we're here, that we do have a good selection of lumber, and that we do offer other services, milling services. That's going to take a while to build, so it's not a get rich, well, I was going to say it's not a get rich quick type of business. Another piece of equipment going by. Everybody's getting ready to do their wheat. They're starting to pull the wheat off this afternoon, so that's my neighbor with the dump wagon. So yeah, it's definitely not a get rich quick business. I don't think it's even personally, unless you're in a perfect situation, I don't think it's a get rich business. I think the amount of cost and the amount of overhead that you have for the product that you're selling, there's a reason why there's not a sawmill on every corner in the public square. It's a tough business. It's a tough business to make your money back in, I think. It kind of has to be a labor of love, I think, and that's kind of what it is for me. I've always been working with wood since I was a young boy, building wood, working with wood, being around the hardwood. It's just, I guess, I've tried to get out of it a couple times, but it keeps coming back. I guess it's kind of in my blood. So, yeah, for me, that's the way it is. And I hope before you go out and make that decision to buy that saw, that you do consider some of these things. It's basically just the kind of the realities of owning the saw. There's a lot of other factors involved, but again, if you're buying it for the love of the saw, then yeah, that's going to be a good purchase for you probably. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say about this today. Time's a ticking. I got a customer that's supposed to be coming today. Hopefully, that's another thing. That's a whole nother video. Guys that we make arrangements to come. I still work out shift work, so I can't keep regular hours. So most of my business is by appointment. Most guys are good. They come when they're told they're going to come, but it is an issue you got to deal with, that some people say they're coming and you you drive out here, you open the shop up, you get ready for them, and then they don't come. So it is a bit frustrating. But it's part of it, and you got to deal with it. But again, that's a different video, so I don't want to go down that road. So anyway, hope this helps. Anybody thinking about buying a saw, if you guys got any questions, feel free to send them, put them in the comments. I'll try to get, I can't promise I get to them, but I do try to look at them, and I'll try to answer them if I can. This is kind of new for me, so it's not, I don't like to promise things I can't do, so that's why I'm saying it that way. But right now I'm not, you know, we're getting very few views on the videos. Hopefully that'll change down the road, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more engagement with the people watching the videos, and hopefully I get better at making them. I know some of the videos I posted, yeah, it's a new thing. It's hard to do. It's like, when you're not, some guys are great, some guys are very fluent, confident, and they're great on the video. For me, it's a little different depending on what I'm doing. But anyway, again, that's another topic as well. So hopefully this helped, guys. Sorry, I'm rambling. If you got any questions about buying a sawmill, put them in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. And thanks for watching. And if you want to follow us here, try to get more videos out of what we're doing here in the sawmill. I got to do a shop tour right now because we're building this this room in here. Everything's kind of a mess, but hopefully once we get a little more organized, I'll give you guys a proper shop tour of what we got here at Cherished Tree Sawmill. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next video. Have a great day.